Alex Golesh said a lot of really important things talking to the media after Auburn's second fall scrimmage, but one of them I think is way more important than everything else.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, I'm Zach Blackerby. He is Christian Rauh over at the Barn Auburn and writes at auburndaily.com. Alex Golesh said a lot of good things following the second scrimmage of fall camp, and we won't get to all of it today. We will continue all of this breakdown on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Auburn as well. But let's start with the most important thing in my mind is him talking about how Joe Simmons at left tackle and Stanton Ramil at right tackle were at those spots for the entire scrimmage. That was a big question that I've had. Like, all right, at what point are we concerned about Stanton Ramil, or is this just all precautionary? I think the news that we got regarding them being this active at those specific spots throughout the scrimmage, I think it's a pretty big deal, Christian.
Yeah, it turned into, is it interesting to is it important? It's absolutely important that we got Stanton Ramil to play the entire scrimmage. And it kind of gives you that feel that they were on that load management thing with him just for normal practices. But when they are simulating gameplay, they're simulating a scrimmage, he's involved the entire time. This is huge because we've been asking about trying to get a step forward about who the five is going to be on the offensive line. You just found your anchor points. It seems like Joe Simmons and Stanton Ramil will be your starters, obviously, as long as health is good, heading into week one in Atlanta against Baylor.
Yeah. Talked about the starting five. Sounds like they're close. Golesh said this, quote, "We're closer. We've challenged that group," talking about the O-line. "We've challenged that group in so many ways. Jacob Strand has continued to fight to get himself into that five. He's shown some positional flexibility there that he's going to find his way in that five." And I think this is interesting for a few different things. Talked about, all right, you feel good about the starting tackles. It's who's the third and fourth tackle option. Positional versatility, like, could he do that? Like, maybe if somebody were to go down. I think Wilson Zero is the third tackle option. Sure. I think Parker Pritchett's the fourth, but if Strand has positional versatility, and it sounds like Strand and Plaz are close, is there a situation where if you get to that point where you need that depth, do you move one of those guys out to tackle? I think that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. When I'm reading this quote, I'm looking at it in two different ways. I feel like it could go in either direction. When he brings up Jacob Strand's name, saying how he's continuing to fight and get himself into the five, okay, does that mean he's front running because you brought his name up among anybody else? Or are you thinking about him as, wrong term of words here, but as maybe an afterthought? You're thinking about your five and then saying, oh, and also Jacob Strand is continuing to get himself into that conversation. That's where I kind of lean myself on after hearing the tone of what Golesh said. I think Deryc Plaz might be leading the battle at this left guard spot after hearing what I heard from Alex Golesh. And then just the flexibility of having Strand be able to be your rotating offensive lineman, maybe call him the sixth man, if you will, that can play interior and at tackle. I think that's where he's at. And now, yeah, maybe he's not the third tackle. Maybe he's not the one that comes off right off the bench if there is an injury to left or right tackle, but having him as that type of availability is super important. Obviously, him understanding the scheme is super important. So that's where I'm going to make my hypotheticals here. I'm going to think that Jacob Strand is just a little tad behind Deryc Plaz after hearing what we heard from Golesh.
I think if Plaz was winning, I think he would have said Plaz by name, talking about how he's really come on over the last week or so, and we've really pushed him. So I think he's saying Strand is made a push to be a potential starter at this point. That's what I took away from that quote.
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way. The tone just kind of, when I initially heard it, the tone shifted me to, okay, why is he bringing his name up and saying he's fighting to get into that five? Does that mean he's not in the five at the moment? That's where my mindset went.
Yeah, I get it. We'll stay on the trenches here. Auburn edge JJ Faulk will be out until at least November and could miss the entire regular season. He had surgery for a recent collarbone injury. That report came out earlier in the day, and then Golesh did confirm all of that. So obviously a spot that you and I've talked about, like who could be that third rusher. JJ Faulk was obviously a part of that conversation. So I think that's super unfortunate for him as a human who's worked his tail off for this opportunity. And then obviously just the depth in that room, we're already kind of had some questions on.
Yeah, certainly had questions on, and those questions will continue to grow now because you mentioned it. I think he was the third player coming off of the edge in the rotation. Now, who steps up? Because you only have 16 days now. Are we talking until Baylor? So there's some questions certainly at that edge position. I still am very confident after what we've seen from players like Jared Smith at the top heavy portion of it. But we all know a DJ Deryc in defense, they rotate. They get some snaps involved in there into their 3 and 4th roles when they can. And right now, losing JJ Faulk, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. Golesh said something very interesting about Keshaun Singleton. Let's jump into that in just a moment right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. We all love 5 Hour Energy here. Had a busy day. Sure, we're all in the same boat. You need a little pick-me-up halfway through the afternoon. Little cotton candy flavor 5 Hour Energy to get you through the day, get you through that final stretch. 0 calories, 0 sugar, very delicious. Who doesn't love cotton candy? And who doesn't love more energy? So
might actually be better than grape flavor. I know that's a really.
I've had both. I prefer the cotton candy.
Yeah,
so.
Same here. Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle's in shambles right now. All flavor, no fluff. Order now at 5hourenergy.com or check them out at Amazon. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Kalshi. Kalshi, you can trade on anything. You can keep getting into all of the action with so many different markets. And I love that you're trading against your peers in a live market. There's no house. It's just you participating in a live market. So as more trades come in for Auburn to exceed the win total of 7, you're going to see that market rise. And based on where you bought in at, it'll be kind of fun to see where that goes. If Auburn wins their first 3 games, let's say they beat Baylor, they beat, Southern Miss, they beat Florida. And then, I bet you see that market continue to go. You can buy in and out at any time. So very fun to see there. Download the Kalshi app today. Use code LOCKEDON to get up to $500 in bonus bets when you trade $25. That is all on the Kalshi app. Continuing on here as we recap some of what Alex Golesh said after the first scrimmage. This is something that he said about Keshaun Singleton. He said, quote, "When his off the field process is right, he can be as special as there is in the country. And he has done that. It's just being fully committed to the process. It's all come together for him this summer. Proud of him." And let's don't forget, Keshaun Singleton missed the first quarter of A-Day because of some disciplinary stuff that, Golesh made the jokes like you can't get him in trouble, but you could take away what he loves, and that's playing football. So I think this is for Golesh, who's so process oriented, to make this declaration publicly. That is him saying, "Yo, watch out. Keshaun Singleton has finally put it all together."
He has been very transparent with his players, and he's not been afraid to call them out or let the folks know, the media know what exactly is going on. And this is no different. We've seen it with a couple other offensive players, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But, Keshaun Singleton, this kind of gives me the feeling that what we kind of expected, that he was kind of in the doghouse a little bit heading into fall camp after the A-Day. And that's why we thought, okay, why is everything being so quiet? But Singleton, why are we hearing about Deshawn Spencer and Chaz Nimrod? And is Singleton still the number 1 receiver? Why is he just doing things he needs to do? Is he just putting his head down? And it sounds like that's exactly what happened. He was just following his process. He was doing what needs to be done. And I think we're going to see a really big time receiver out of him in the SEC starting week 1. I am super excited now that we're finally hearing this from Golesh, from Singleton, because there was a little bit of mystery behind him about what we are going to get from him. And then the last couple of weeks, it certainly changed.
Yeah. And once again, like the focus kind of came off of him for a little bit. He was the guy we as a fan base were probably most collectively excited about because he was Byram's main guy when you look at the season of work. And then we learn more about Chaz, and it's like, oh, well, Chaz was kind of the leader before he got hurt. He was on pace for 1,000 yards. Like, what would have happened if he stayed healthy? And we heard great things about him in the spring and in summer and in fall. Then Deshawn Spencer emerges. But I think this about Keshaun Singleton is great. And it sounded like his first scrimmage was really solid too. So exciting to hear more praise go his way. So
one of my favorite movies is El Dorado from Disney, and they have this great quote, and it says both is good. So hopefully Singleton and Nimrod can be great.
Yeah, sure. And let's throw in Jeremiah Coger and Deshawn Spencer as well. Why not? Give us all of them. Give us all of them. All right, we'll continue our discussion on Auburn's scrimmage on tomorrow morning's edition of Locked on Auburn. So be sure you're subscribed, both on audio and YouTube. It would mean an absolute ton. Christian, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Yeah, over at the Barn Auburn, and you can find my written work at auburndaily.com. We're certainly going to be talking about this scrimmage for sure.
Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.